So now I will call the meeting to order. This is the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union board reorganizational meeting, and we are starting at 6:36 p.m. I will start by asking for nominations for chair.
I have one.
Yes, Bill?
Amy McMullen.
Thank you. Amy McMullen.
This is Nikki, I'll second.
Any others?
I'll second.
I'm not. So I think that we take nominations first. And
Right.
then
There's not a second. Sorry about that.
Okay. So does anybody have any other nominations? Please, let me see. I guess I can see if your hand is raised, but hearing none, I will ask Amy if she will accept the nomination, and then we can vote, right? Okay.
And I will accept the nomination because I think we're a really good team working together.
Thank you, Amy. So do I hear a motion to approve Amy McMullen as the board chair, or assign, I guess?
So moved.
No. Thank you. Bill Yates makes the motion, and who seconds it?
Mark will second.
Mark Youngling seconds it. And how do I take the vote? Do I have to take it by verbal, or do I have to go around the room?
Either way.
I think asking for yays and then nays.
Okay. So all those in favor, please say yay.
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 All those, thank you. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. I now turn the meeting over to Amy McMullen.
Okay, and I want to thank everyone for your continued confidence, and I will work very hard this year. We have some really great stuff that we're working on, and I'm thrilled that we're all working together on it. So I will take nominations for our vice chair.
I nominate Bill Yates.
I second.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of electing Bill Yates as our vice chair, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. It's unanimous, Bill. Do you accept?
With bells and whistles.
Thank you. Next, we have clerk of the board. I will take nominations for clerk of the board.
Who's our current clerk?
I believe our current clerk is Colleen Spence.
I'll
It
nominate
is
Colleen.
That's fine.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I will take a motion. All those in favor of electing Colleen Spence as clerk of the board, say aye.
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 Opposed? Congratulations, Colleen. You are
Thank you.
clerk of the board. Thank you. Next, we have election of treasurer. I'll take nominations for treasurer.
I nominate Nancy Pederick.
Who is the current treasurer?
Is it Scott?
I was appointed so I was not elected. I was appointed a few months ago, half a year ago.
I nominate Scott Richardson. If Nancy's looking hesitant. So
Yeah.
I would accept the nomination.
Nancy, do you accept the nomination?
No, I accept the nomination.
Are there any other nominations for treasurer? Hearing none. All those in favor of electing Scott as the treasurer for the supervisory union, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Congratulations, Scott.
Thank you, Amy.
And you have already signed all the paperwork. So, man, you are,
Voila,
yeah.
off
you are
and
good
running.
to go. Yeah. Sweet. So we have, sometimes Scott actually gets to take a vacation, or do you? I've sometimes heard that farmers don't get to, but you do go out of town every now and then, don't you?
Get a creamy. Yeah.
Well, in the event that you take that week off to go get your creamy, we have traditionally had someone, a vice treasurer as such, someone who can fill in. And Scott, were you taking that role before? Were you taking the role of the assistant treasurer to fill in?
I'm sorry. Was I before? I don't recall. Yeah, I guess I was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Good point. Yeah, then. Okay.
Is there someone who would be interested in filling that role?
I'd do that
Okay.
happily.
I'd nominate Nancy Pedrick.
I thank you.
Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of having Nancy as the fill-in vice treasurer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. Congratulations, Nancy. So Scott would let you know when he's taking that week off or whatever, or.
And I believe that I've signed all those things too, so that would be helpful.
Okay, great.
For a lot of them.
Okay, and now we have the signers of the manifest. And that is the person or persons, because again, we like to have two in the event that someone is on vacation. That's the person who goes to the SU office and reviews all of the invoices and the check run to make sure that things are okay, that there's documentation to support all of the accounts payable, and signs off on that, and then the check run is done. So I will take nominations for two people, signers of the manifest.
Who is signing now?
I nominate Rebecca Roisman.
I think I'm the assistant to I think Bill for MASD.
That's what makes you a natural fit for the other one.
Yeah. Is
yes,
there-
I think I signed. Yeah, I signed. the Ascutney and the board manifests.
So who? So
When I
who's
Bill.
Okay.
Well, but can Bill do? Yeah, you did both last year, didn't you?
Is there someone else who would like to have that opportunity? It's pretty enlightening to see how our budgets are.
So we have a nomination right now of
Yeah,
Rebecca.
we do. We have Rebecca. Is there someone else?
So, well, let's. Rebecca, is this something you might want to do?
Well, I would probably be doing some of it with you for Mount Ascutney School District, but not as often as you. But I'd be interested in learning it and working with someone.
Okay.
Those are, and to be clear, those are different accounts payable
Okay.
than
Right.
MAST and at the SU.
So I guess the question I have is that instead of us voting on it, which we will vote on it, is Rebecca, do you want to take this over or do you want to continue with me doing it? That's really my question.
I wouldn't mind continuing with you doing it and working with you.
Okay.
If that's, yeah.
Okay, so what I am wondering is, because Bill is our vice chair, is if there is someone else from one of our other districts in our supervisory union who would like the opportunity, because it's only every 2 weeks that you would go to the SU office and look over invoices to make sure that if you have any questions about how looking at invoices and the backup paperwork, then you sign off on that and then it goes to the check run.
So Amy, what you're saying is that at least twice a month, you need to present yourself at the SU, at the administrative office.
Correct.
Okay, so
And Gail calls the person to let whoever it is know. And there would be a main person, and then the second person is the assistant in case that main person is on vacation.
So Amy, what I'm hearing you say, and I don't disagree with you, I agree with you, but what I'm hearing is that if you're wondering if someone from a district other than a Ascutney district might want to do this.
Correct.
Okay.
Just having the opportunity. Given the fact that you are the vice chair of this
Right.
board.
So I guess what Amy's asking is, are there any volunteers from the other two school districts who would like to take this over, knowing, of course, that I would not be deeply offended in any way or upset. And it would be nice for some other members of the district to kind of get a glimpse of the inner workings of the district. I mean, I've done it for 2 years.
Mark, you have your hand raised.
Yeah. Jamie or Anne Marie, any interest in this? Jamie?
I'm assuming, so you said this is twice a month, and I'm assuming it's during, like, what are the hours that it would have to be done under?
Between 8 and 4.
I mean, the issue here is that it has to do with convenience as well. As
Right.
I work at Hartford, and I drive through Windsor, it is convenient for me to pull into the office and sign it. And to be perfectly honest, there really isn't a whole lot to learn from going through these documents. But yeah. So
yeah, I did it for a couple of years as well.
yeah. But if it's inconvenient for anybody, I would not suggest doing it. And as I do the Ascutney one already, I would be willing to continue, even though I agree with Amy's point, is spreading the love.
So if we have no other people who are just raring to get called in every now and then, I will take those who are in favor of Rebecca and Bill as signers of the manifest. Say aye.
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 Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? And sorry to just drag that out way too long. Now we have the very, so this is a very important one. This is the election of budget committee members. And there are also 2. And these people will work together with David and administrators to put together the budget for the supervisory union. And the budget for the supervisory union now includes all of special education, technology, transportation, early education, and the business office. And I probably left something out there, but it's much more encompassing than it was when I first got on the board, however many
Decade.
ago or something. Yeah. So it's really helpful to have people from the board, so that when we come to the board meetings in the fall to start discussing the budget, we will have 2 people on the board who are more familiar and can help us all understand what's happening. So I will take nominations or volunteers to be budget committee members.
What are the hours involved in this? Like when does the work typically take place?
That depends. It could be a day meeting. It could be an evening meeting. It depends on when people are available.
This is Nikki. I nominate Colleen Spence.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's Nikki. I nominate Colleen Spence.
Okay, so we have Colleen Spence.
I think, if I remember correctly, who did it with me last year? Or this past year? I have a hard time remembering the difference between negotiations and.
It's Colleen. I think I was on it last year, but I never received any invitations to any meetings. So remember me and I will come.
Okay. We will remember that.
And I think it's helpful to have, Amy, you're talking about 2. I think it's helpful to have at least 1 member from each board.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. Particularly because once it always turns into a crunch time of budgets. We're working on our individual district budgets, but a huge chunk of our individual budgets is the supervisory union assessment. And it turns into super crunch time, which could also be why board members aren't always called. But when we go to our individual district meetings, to have someone who has been serving on that committee be able to discuss it at our district meetings and to assist in the explanation to our communities how the SU budget is created and how the assessments are decided, etc. That would be good. So how about we take some
I
volunteers?
I don't mind doing it again. But I don't know if I really want to be on the negotiating committee and the budget committee at the same time.
No.
Hopefully we can get a 3-year contract done, but
Yeah, I would say being on both of those could be very
that was a little much.
yeah, just a little much. So we have Colleen from Heartland. Do we have anyone from the?
I'd nominate Jamie Turner from Weathersfield.
Yes, Jamie, you had your hand raised. Was that you were going to volunteer? Yay, thank you. Okay, so Jamie Turner. And who do we have from the Mount Ascutney School District?
I nominate Elizabeth Burrs.
Elizabeth? Ooh, did Elizabeth?
I don't know if she is. My camera isn't really working for some reason.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, and if
I can't, I wish
yeah,
I could, but I can't possibly do it. I'm sorry.
Rebecca, I think you would be great on it, so I would nominate you. I am nominating you, actually. Yeah.
I would accept if you nominated me.
Thank you. Okay, you've been nominated. So we have Colleen Spence from Heartland. We have Jamie Turner from Weathersfield, and we have Rebecca from Mount Ascutney. All those in favor of this group to represent the board when it comes to creating the SU budget, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations. And I think it's really important that we as a board just be more, the word that comes to mind is vigilant, but I think more proactive to say, okay, David, we're working on the budget, let's have a meeting. So that kind of thing.
That was going to be my question, Amy. It's how do you know when you're supposed to meet and who does that?
Well, it's David who at a meeting probably in about August will say, okay, we are starting to look at the budget. Would you say, Angie, that that's about when it happens?
When did you say? December?
No, August. When they start working.
We start working on the budget like as soon as we start going back to school. That was your question? Sorry, I was a little distracted.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, so it's really early on that the SU budget work starts. So
yes, the SU budget is usually finalized by the October board meeting. So and it's very fast.
Right. And there's usually I won't even get into description of how it often goes, but it will start early, and I will remind David to include the board members who are on the budget committee. So when all of the conversations start. Next, we have designation of official newspapers. I think currently we have the Valley News, the Eagle Times, the Vermont Standard. Let's see, what am I missing? I think at this point, Vermont Digger is probably good to have. Am I missing any? No? All those in favor of having the Valley News, Eagle Times, Vermont Standard, and Vermont Digger as our official newspapers, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. And finally, establishment of the meeting day, time, and place. I've heard a rumor that we might, once we're all vaccinated, etc., that we can potentially meet in person. I think that would be very exciting. Maybe even to have a summer meeting outside. I don't know. That makes it kind of hard for the virtual part of it, but anyway, meeting day and time. We have the fourth Monday of every month at 6:30. Has that worked for everyone?
Yes.
Mhm.
And for now, we are virtual. And at some point, we can discuss going around to the different schools once the schools are open for non-teacher student to enter buildings. But for now, it will be virtual. So meetings, fourth Monday at 6:30. And of course, with budget season or any other sort of emergency, we may or may not need to schedule special meetings, but that we'll cross that bridge when and if we come to it. So thank you everyone for patience on the reorganization. And we are now moving on to
Amy, do we
Yeah.
need to vote on that time? The day?
we can.
Okay, it was on the agenda. I just didn't.
Yeah, we should. So it's part of the record. All those in favor of the meeting day as the fourth Monday, time 6:30, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Scott. And a quorum is 7. So it's always good to, it's even better when all of us are at a meeting. So thank you for everybody being here tonight. We move on with the agenda. Changes and additions to the agenda.
I have an addition, Amy.
Okay.
It's in the very low levels of hierarchy, but there was one action that I took part in as the SU treasurer, and it would take me about 4 sentences to tell everybody that.
Okay, so you'd like that under items for action or just discussion?
More like a report.
Okay, yes. So are you okay?
Anywhere.
Okay, after the SU goals in discussion?
Sure.
Okay,
Amy,
yes.
I actually have some of exact same kind of thing that we did as an SU that I signed off on. So I'll go find that.
Okay, so you would like to announce something at, okay. Next, we have approval of the minutes from April 26th. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Seconded.
Was that you, Nikki?
Yep.
Okay. Are there, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any changes, comments, clarifications to the minutes?
Amy, I couldn't hear, but who moved?
Scott.
That was Scott.
Thank you.
Jamie, you have your hand raised?
I believe since our meeting started at 6:30, that the call to order at 6:02 is probably incorrect.
That is. That's entirely possible. So who had their hand raised? Angie? No?
You said 6:32 when you opened the meeting.
No, this is on the minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So call to order was at 6:02. I do believe that that was like years ago, back in April. Does anyone
Amy,
recall if we
It's on
started?
my, I'm sorry, Amy, it's on my calendar at 6:30. So I think we started at 6:30.
Okay. Yeah, so
I would agree, but also you could check the tape and there's a video of it, but I believe it was 6:30 as well.
right. Yeah, I don't recall starting the meeting early last month. Although we occasionally do that, but I don't recall doing that. So with that correction, are there any others? All those in favor of approving the minutes with that correction of the start time, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, now we have public participation and or announcements. And this is typically public participation on items not related to the agenda. And I'm not seeing hands raised. Are there any announcements from board members? Bill?
My daughter Sarah graduated on Saturday from Wheaton, magna cum laude.
Oh, wow.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Very cool.
Windsor held its prom on Saturday. And I believe it was just a very successful. Would you say, Wendy?
It was amazing. My kids were so happy. It was beautiful. The tent was great. The in-house food from our own cafeteria staff was nothing short of miraculous. I don't know if you were able to see the pictures, but the fancy cut pineapple and all the chocolate covered strawberries. I mean, the kids were in heaven. They were having the best time. It felt the most normal I've seen the kids in a really long time.
Yeah, it looked wonderful, all the pictures I've seen. Angie, you have your hand raised?
I must be click happy tonight. I'm sorry.
It's quite all right, no problem. Are there any other announcements? Colleen Deschamps.
I just wanted to add that we also were able to have the Grand March at the rear of the high school and use our outdoor stage. And we were able to have socially distanced families, and it was nice to have community to come view it as well.
Lovely. Thank you, Colleen.
Oh, and Amy, I will add, I'm sorry that I was late, everyone, but I was coaching a softball game that we were down a run in the 7th, and actually 2 runs, and we had to come back, and the girl hit the run in, and we won 7-6. So sorry for my delay.
Woo! All right. Thank you, Wendy. That's a good announcement. Excellent. And I have to shut a door. I'll be right back.
One door shuts and thus another opens.
I know. So thank you. Let me see. Any other? So we have the superintendent's report up next. Angie, were you going to do that?
Yeah, so David's wife had surgery this afternoon, and it had been rescheduled at least 3 times due to some issues that she was having. So he is safely tucking her in bed because she has to lay down. And he may be joining us if he can get her settled in. But I know he really wanted to be here, but as you know, family first. So I don't have a superintendent's report for you.
Okay, thank you. I mean, that is a report, so yeah, thanks. So we are going to move directly to items for discussion. The first item for discussion is recovery plan and Esser update and draft. And that is you, Angie. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I am going to present my screen. I'm trying to figure out what and since I can't see the window of the chat, if you could just let me know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
Let me get this to the beginning. There we go. Be with you in just a moment. Dear board members, staff, parents, and community members here with us tonight, and those of you who will catch us on the recorded version in the days to come. Tonight, the administrative team and I will be presenting our draft of our recovery plan with an outline of the budget for ESSER 2 funds. This is part of the process. I want to remind you that the recovery plan draft will be completed and submitted to the Agency of Education in the next week. We eagerly await your feedback on this plan and encourage you to join the conversation. This is a draft, and every time I meet with the Agency of Education, they remind us that our recovery plans can be updated as we learn more. So in order to provide some feedback, if you want to, if you have access to a internet connection right now, you can go to tinyurl, tinyurl.com/WSESU recovery. And you can submit your questions, comments, and concerns in that form. That will probably be the easiest way to provide us feedback. But I am going to ask that you hold your questions, comments, and concerns for after the presentation. or you can please submit them via that link. What is education recovery? The Vermont Agency of Education defines education recovery as mitigating the impact of this pandemic on the academic, social, and emotional well-being of our students. It requires that SUs build on their continuous improvement work that has been required for as long as I've been in this job, and prior to that for 4 or 5 years, for regular federal funding. Esser stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. It could not be more confusing. There are 3 pots of money right now that all have the Esser label. Esser 1 started when the pandemic started in March 2020, and those funds go through the summer, I believe. Esser 2 funds provide funds for addressing learning loss and post-pandemic conditions of learning through September 23. And the 3rd pot of money, which we will be hearing about, we have been hearing about it from the Agency of Education, and we're getting more guidance on that very soon. That provides for the sustainability of systems improvement to ensure protection against future pandemic situations through September 2024. So Esser 2 is what we're talking about tonight. So throughout our presentation, you'll hear from our students and our staff. These quotes were gleaned from our recovery surveys. The recovery surveys that we sent to staff a few weeks ago, we had 152 staff respond and 543 students from grades 3 through 12. Students said, "It's hard to learn through a screen. I wish it would just go back to normal full days." Could we agree more? I had to add some levity. This 6th grader said, "I did like eating lunch in the classroom, but I hate having special for 2 weeks straight. And I do not like having special in the classroom at all. I do not like remote learning, but I do like going straight to classroom because it gives you time to get settled. I like having recess at the end of the day a lot because you are not super sweaty and horribly smelling coming in from last period. And I cannot stand wearing mask one bit. I enjoyed being able to breathe nitrogen and oxygen." So I wanted to remind you of our Portrait of a Graduate process that we started back in June 2019, and the portrait was adopted in fall of 2020. The Portrait of a Graduate provides the North Star for our where we want to go with our students, what we want to provide for our students. The plan that will get us to creating the conditions. Sorry, I'm trying to navigate the screen and my phone. The Portrait of a Graduate identifies the attitudes, skills, and dispositions that we want for our students, but it is the strategic plan work through which we create these conditions. Our 5 competencies are communication, critical thinking, empathy, perseverance, and integrity. This teacher says, "This year was tremendously hard on teachers. I think a really important part of supporting our students' success is supporting teachers' wellness and mental health. Anything that relieves stress, creates community, and gives teachers voice is necessary." From the Vermont AOE, the priority and conceptualization of our recovery work will be student-focused. It's important to acknowledge, however, that staff will need additional support as we embark on this next phase of our response. Districts should be alert to opportunities to provide staff with support services and activities relative to implementing recovery plans for students. State support teams will be alert to staff needs in this area and will organize communities of practice to enable networks of educators to share and connect more dynamically across the state. Creating the conditions for our staff to share and connect with each other is a key aspect of our plan. So part of the recovery process, the guidance, the state agency provided us were 3 key student indicators of recovery. These areas that are in no particular order are social emotional health, mental health and well-being, student engagement and truancy, academic achievement and success. While all 3 areas are inextricably woven together in the path to student success, the recovery plan requires that we address each area separately. As we looked at the key student indicators as part of the recovery plan process, it became clear that we would have no trouble aligning our recovery efforts with our continuous improvement efforts outlined in our strategic plan. Lucky for us, they aligned, and this slide is demonstrating that alignment. Our work was clear. We would invest time, energy, and resources in strengthening our student outcomes through the work of the strategic plan and address any additional needs identified for recovery. My favorite part of this year was being with my friends and seeing my teacher. That's what brings me joy. This little girl went from remote only to in-person halfway through the school year. Recovery Plan Phase 1 was the initial needs assessment. In the initial needs assessment, we considered the wealth of data that we have gathered across the supervisory union to determine our current level of needs. We had numerical data in our Power School, attendance data and assessment data like Track My Progress. We conducted surveys of staff and students. However, much of this data was anecdotal, the stories we've heard about what was working and what wasn't working. We were hearing from our stakeholders all along. So I want to remind you of the 4 goals of the strategic plan. The symbols that are on each goal in the next 4 slides relate back to the recovery plan. So student success relates to academic achievement. The brain is our academic achievement symbol. WSESU will improve students' learning experiences because the personal, educational, vocational, and civic success of our students are increasingly challenged in our rapidly changing world. Strategic plan goal number 2 is culture. WSESU will further integrate the whole student into their education so that students increasingly see relevance, purpose, and connection between their learning experiences and their individual and collective lives. This strategic plan goal relates to student mental health and well-being, as symbolized by the heart, and academic engagement and truancy, as symbolized by the graphic with the students. Strategic plan goal 3, student wellness and engagement. WSESU will further integrate the whole student into their education so that, did I just read this twice? It seems I did. So my apologies. There is another goal. I will come back and correct that. I forgot to correct the text. Strategic plan goal number 4, information and communication. WSESU will improve the quality of and effectiveness of its 2-way communication so that stakeholder trust, understanding, and support will continue to advance the education and opportunities for its students. The strategic plan goal number 2 was the one that I omitted. My apologies. That one is WSESU will strengthen and broaden the connections between and among all staff and the core work of education in pursuit of greater staff engagement, well-being, innovation, inclusion, and resolve. To sum that up, our recovery plan includes student mental health and well-being, the heart icon, the whole child, engagement and truancy, and academic achievement as symbolized by the brain. Students really missed being able to engage in unified arts opportunities. From materials to performing groups and instruments, we need serious dedication to building these programs back, particularly the instrumental and choral programs, who were so limited and not allowed by many of the structures and protocols that we used for the pandemic, a WSESU unified arts teacher. This student said, it made me very isolated, and I have an incredibly hard time focusing with remote school, and I get in the car to go home, and I'm exhausted constantly from waking up early. It is making my mental disorders worse. My separation anxiety is through the roof, as well as my depression, and I want to hug my friends. But there were some positives. No mind exploding headaches from the lunchroom. I get to see my friends. I don't have to be dragged to my mother's work. I have an excuse to not visit my father. And my mom isn't worried about me getting a cold or head lice. WSESU 6th grader. And now our Director of Student Support Services, Katie Ahern, will talk with us about engagement and truancy. Katie?
Did I unmute? It's always my challenge.
Yes, you are there. Just tell me when you're ready for the slide.
All right, I'm ready for the first one. Be discussing the key indicator, engagement and truancy. The belief statement, if we provide students with autonomy, competency, and belonging, then they will become engaged leaders in their own learning. This guided our investments in this area. Next, the major investment for engagement was looking at increasing student to staff to student ratio and focused instructional time. Overall student learning outcomes as measured by our local assessment in math and ELA show that students have not suffered significant learning loss. We attribute this to smaller student staff ratios, fewer transitions, emphasis on core subjects learning, and interdisciplinary projects, as well as increased student voice and choice. Next, supporting investments. We also have used other sources of funding to support interventionists, school counselors and nurses, and mental health. We propose using our ESSER 2 funds in the following ways: Summer Academy, interventionists, assistant recovery coordinator, looking at a middle level model, increasing data tools and literacy, and increasing teaching staff.
Thank you, Katie. This student said, I did like eating lunch in the classroom, but I hate having special for 2 weeks straight. And I do not like having special in the classroom at all. I think I read this guy. I do not like remote learning, but it's worthy of repeating because it's so funny. I do not like remote learning, but I do like going straight to classroom because it gives you time to get settled. I like having recess at the end of the day a lot because you're not super sweaty and horribly smelling coming in for last period. And I cannot stand wearing masks one bit. I enjoyed being able to breathe nitrogen and oxygen. And the mask comment, the kids, was a frequent comment in the student data. I think one of the biggest things that came out of this pandemic in regards to my students and teaching is how crucial project-based, hands-on, and group work is to students. I also realized that I had more flexibility not teaching through a regimented program, which meant some stress of the rigorous program was taken off both the students and the teachers' backs. A WSESU grade 6 teacher. And now Kate, Ryan, and Colleen Deschamps will talk to us about academic achievement.
Here is my mic. For academic achievement, we use the first gate for our entire SU is our multi-tiered system of support, our MTSS system. And we believe that if we are using all of these pieces to support our students, it is going to make them have a stronger academic achievement will increase for our students. If we have the universal design for learning, differentiation, personalization, flexible pathways for our students to choose their passions and what they want to study, intervention, co-teaching, coordinated curriculum, and engaging instructional practices. Next, please. The major investment for our academic achievement is the MTSS system. And the system of supports provides a consistent approach for all of our schools in our SU in order for us to streamline our resources, intervention tools, practices, and the way we collect data. Next. The supporting investments in Esser that are connected to our multi-tiered systems of support are as well our Summer Academy, our interventionists, the intervention support tools such as social emotional screeners and exact path assessments for our students, working with our interventionists, assistant recovery coordinator, our middle level model, after school tutoring, and our data collection tools. Next. Other supporting investments are for our professional learning for staff, the learning framework, professional learning communities, which we call our PLC meetings, where we discuss student work, universal design for learning, curriculum development, and Leader in Me. And the most important piece to our investment is our team, our people, our teachers, our instructional coaches, director of curriculum, our interventionists, our coordinators for our MTSS team, our special educators, our support staff, and our recovery coordinators.
This teacher said, having a qualified second adult to support and monitor the class so that I can address, process, support, student engagement, I think student issues, incidents, and social emotional incidents, and therefore build relationships, has had a positive impact on my relationships with students with social emotional skill gaps. That was a WSESU grade 5 teacher. This student said, one thing that worked for me was having more adults in the room. I think more students could get help at once. One thing that did not work for me was remote learning after Christmas break. Different people were on different levels, so it was not fast-paced enough for some people and too fast for others. That's a WSESU 5th grader. This primary teacher says a focus on social emotional learning was imperative this year. It is what enabled my students to make any kind of academic progress. This student, a Windsor High School student, said, when in person, I can get help and have it explained to me better than I was thinking of in my head. But in the online classes, it's hard to understand what to do when the teacher can't show me. And now Christine Bourne, the Heartland school principal, will talk to us about social emotional learning.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So our belief statement that addresses the recovery key student indicator of social emotional learning, mental health, and well-being is that we believe if we have strong connections with students, families, and colleagues, that students will be able to access learning at their most efficient level. Next slide, Angie. We strongly believe that social emotional learning is the foundation upon which improvement in all the other areas can be achieved. Our major investment for this key indicator is Leader in Me, which is a framework that aligns with our recovery plan and our strategic plan. Leader in Me is based on a theory of change known as the see, do, get cycle. When you change the way you see things, it influences what you do and the results that you get. The work focuses on 5 core paradigms, which are everyone can be a leader, students and staff. Change starts with me. Everyone has genius. Educators empower students to lead their own learning, and development of the whole person. Through this work, educators begin to see their role, student potential, and the purpose of school culture in a new way that leads to increased student engagement, well-being, attendance, and academic achievement. We've put the link here in case you want to do a little more digging around Leader in Me, but we have a short video clip that really demonstrates what Leader in Me really is all about. So Angie's going to hopefully click it and it will work.
Why Leader in Me? You look in the eyes of your students and you can see their need for security and hope in a future largely unknown, their desire to belong and to matter. You can see the hunger and the hurt. You look in the eyes of your families and you see trust, delicately given, that you will take their place for these hours to nurture the worth and potential of their most cherished, to partner in teaching and raising well, You look in the mirror and you see a tiredness, driven by the fire to change lives and not enough time to do it. A striving to guide and teach and not enough balance to support it. A hope that the learning they need is the learning you can provide. And when you look at school today, what do you want to see? Leader in Me isn't as much about doing things differently as it is first seeing them differently. When one principal reimagined what school could be for her students, her teachers, families, for her community, who would have thought that vision would see over 5,000 schools around the world, transforming how they proactively create the learning culture they want to see in their buildings. Here we have demonstrated impact with measurable results, and we're just getting started. You're invited to join this community of seeing the power of leadership as a choice rather than a position, one that everyone makes every day, of enjoying the discovery and unlocking of genius, where everyone contributes rather than competes, of making change happen because you've stopped waiting for someone else to start it, of adventuring into the satisfaction of classroom leadership and away from the stress of classroom management, of taking the talk of whole child learning into whole person teaching practice, and getting hands-on with real social emotional learning at school and at home that doesn't shortchange academic growth, but turbocharges it. Leader in Me isn't easily undertaken or quickly done, but leaders see what needs to change and take steps to make it happen. Doing what propels all of us in this profession, helping others to see what they don't yet see in themselves. That's the adventure and the promise of Leader in Me.
Thanks, Angie.
I gotta
Yeah,
figure out how to advance the slide. There we go.
So hopefully that gave you a little bit of a picture of what Leader in Me is. It's pretty powerful, especially when you see it in action, which some staff members have. So some other supporting investments in Esser for the upcoming year are our Summer Academy, which you've been hearing about, is well planned, and we're very excited about that program. I think we have about almost 100 kids that we'll be servicing. Our SU-wide developmental kindergarten program, a reduction in class sizes, which will be made possible through additional teaching staff. We are planning to implement a social emotional screening assessment so we can really track how our kids are doing in that realm, and Hcrs school-based clinician, which we never have enough time in our current school-based clinician schedule to meet the needs of all our students. Some supporting investments are listed here. I won't go over all of them. Some of them should sound familiar because we've been doing the work around trauma transformation, collaborative problem solving. Those are things we've been continuously working on. An increased fidelity to our social emotional curriculum. We have a Michigan model for health education, which ties in and relates, and PBIS and responsive classroom. Some other staff that are specific to this area. We are HOPE, our school psychologists, our SEIs, our homeschool coordinator, school counselors, all our staff really. So thank you, Angie.
Thank you, Christine.
Yep.
This WSESU special educator told us that mental health has been affected in ways we don't completely understand yet, especially in preteens and teens. I think we will see the effects for years to come. We need to make it a priority for all students, not just a few with the most severe symptoms. We cannot expect that students will retain all they have learned in the last 1.5 years. They've been preoccupied and their brains have been through a collective and individual trauma. We must be willing to put the brakes on, focus on the whole child, meet them where they are, and differentiate appropriately. Only then will we see true recovery. This Windsor High School student said having people to relate to and have support was important in maintaining some level of normalcy in these circumstances. this WSESU grade 5 teacher said, having a qualified second, I'm sorry, I thought I did a good job picking all the slides. Apparently, I repeated a few, but that's okay. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about what are the kinds of investments that we're making for our recovery plan. Actually, this slide, I think Jennifer's going to take a few of the first couple slides, right, Jen? She's going to talk to us about time. Thank you, Jen.
Sure. I don't know about you, but I can only imagine that many of you are feeling a little overwhelmed at this point. We have tossed a whole lot out there at you. But rest assured, we are spending a lot of time thinking about being very purposeful in the work that we are doing. And one of the things we know in education is we have limited time. We have limited resources in general. And what we invest our time in is a pretty clear indication of what we care about. And one of the things we do pretty well, I think, as a district is we try and look at what the research says, both in our local experiences, the data there, as well as what the big ideas come out in the literature. And in the literature, we know that collective efficacy is the most powerful component to any kind of school improvement. And I can share the resources with you on that, but it's pretty clear that how we collectively work together as adults, how we support each other, and how we are collectively on the same page and able to learn from each other, because we all bring strengths to the table and we all have our next places to learn. How we do that is incredibly important. We also know in our past practices here in the SU, I'm now almost in my 9th year, and since I have been here, we've tried multiple ways to do some collective work with some very limited success. One of the ways we've tried to do is during the school hours when teachers are working with kids, try and pull them out to do some work, and that's really hard for teachers to do. They know the import of being there with their class, and they know when they're not with their class that it gets really tough for their class. So pulling them out of class is consistently a challenge, and we get inconsistent results of participation. We also know that trying to do after school hours and pay stipends also doesn't get the job done. We do know across our system, we have about 20 staff members who are consistently, regularly, those who are getting all the work done. They're on every committee, they're doing all the trainings, and what we need is we need to spread this work out. We've got skills that we can't access right now because we don't have time for that collective work. We have talent and knowledge that we need to spread amongst all of us so that we can all continue learning, because the biggest thing that we have to do through all of this is close gaps. When we're talking about recovery, when we're talking about education in general, we're looking at closing the gaps, and that's closing gaps from things like what the state expects us to do in terms of state standards, but even more than that, they have a couple of very clear expectations of us, which is a MTSS system, multi-tier systems of support that is functioning. And right now we're in so many different places because to do that work takes significant adult time. We also know that we are expected since 2014, to have a unified curriculum, at this point we do not have a collective unified curriculum across the board. And a big challenge to that is that we haven't had good time for our staff to work on this. It's not something that happens overnight unless we're going to go and purchase some curriculum already done that does not necessarily reflect what we believe in our local experience. And we also know that we've developed Portrait of Graduate as our local North Star that we want to make sure we hold on to. That was developed by teachers, administrators, but more importantly, by the community with which we serve, the community with which we hope our students become at some point adults who are functioning in that system. So we need to really look at how we're going to close the gap between where we are and how we're going to get to that North Star, the Portrait of Graduate's 5 competencies in communication, in empathy, in perseverance, in critical thinking, and in integrity. And then we also need to look at our individual students. How are we going to close the gaps for them? And so in the research, it's pretty clear the things that work are things that we have some talent in already, but we need to make sure that across the board we're developing these. And if we are to fully develop our collective capacity, we need to do this in a way that works, and that requires sustained time. We also know implementation systemic implementation does not say the spray and pray or do one shot professional development works. We know what does work is ongoing collective practice. So when we're looking at what we're hoping to do is develop time and supports for this. So we want to tap into our adults in our system as leaders in their own areas of expertise, get a baseline for all of us in areas of the curriculum and areas of social emotional work and areas of use of data. But then we want people to become experts in certain areas. And doing this requires us to find the time. And so when we're talking about how we're going to make this happen, a part of it is investing in our students, a part of it is investing in, response to intervention or intervention systems. Those are seen as very powerful, but to do that well, you need time as adults to talk through what is working and what isn't working. So as we're diving into next year, we're really trying to find what the research says, what we think we can come up with. And, I think as we're heading to the next steps, looking at these long lists that we've been tossing out at you all, they're not separate. They're sort of different ways of looking at the same problem. And in time, I think over education in general, we'll come to a better sense of how to make it look less branched off. I think that's something we do really well in education, is sit in our own silos. So as we move forward, and Angie, you can go ahead to the next slide. The practices that we're looking at, the MTSS is a state expectation that we are really trying to do. That requires us to talk about data, to talk in teams about data, to talk about how we're implementing our curriculum. Is there gaps in our curriculum between what we are doing and what we are expected to do? Are there gaps in our curriculum with how we're teaching it? So we need time for that. We need time to really talk about unique needs of our students, our very diverse learners, so that we can make sure that we are providing universal design for learning as best we can, and then specific interventions for those things that require a very different approach to learning until we integrate those approaches to learning into our teaching. Looking at proficiency-based instruction, curriculum, and assessment is something we have been trying to do for a long time, but we have not had significant time to invest for all of our staff to get the job done. We need time to co-plan in order to really develop robust universal designs for learning. When we talk about our culture, we've done some really good work, and I've been talking to people across the state. Our system has already got a leg up. When we talk about trauma-informed practices, when we talk about collaborative problem solving, these are things that we have done a lot already, and we don't want to lose those. So continuing to invest in that work, and we've got some expertise in our systems that make it, at this point, I believe, sustainable. Our school climate of responsive classroom or PBIS are other things that also require us to learn alongside each other and learn from each other. So as we move forward, this is something we need to pay attention to, and we are hoping that through this recovery plan, we can start to be more mindful and purposeful in that work. And Angie, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you. Some things that work for me is that I get to spend time with my class and my class only. I don't have to do anything with any other classes, which is nice. And one thing that didn't work for me is in the past few months, I've been anxious, and it's not from the pandemic. And I don't think that there's anything the teachers can do about it, but I've just noticed that I am just more anxious overall. That's from one of our 6th graders. I'm going to talk to you now about our Esser funding, how we put our dollars to work for us. We invested in our human capital, so we have investments in Esser 2 for interventionists, teachers to reduce class size, and mental health workers. We invested in our academic programming through Summer Academy, transitional kindergarten, interventionists and coaches, and an after-school tutoring. So one thing I wanted to point out was that the Esser funds can be used for a broad range of allowable uses, many of which are beyond the scope of the recovery plan. So I'm not going to read you through this list, but here's some things you can see. Summer playing there, mental health services, vulnerable populations, sanitation, coordination with government for preparedness response. Those are not things necessarily that are going to all show up in our recovery plan, but they will show up in our ESSER 2 budget. This also, recovery planning also includes funds that are served through our other programs like the Consolidated Federal Program Grant, Titles 1, which is about improving the student program for students at risk, our low-income students. Title 2 is about improving professional learning for our staff. Title 4 is about well-rounded education, safe and healthy schools, and technology. Any investment that I can write in the Consolidated Federal Program Grant, I can also write in ESSERs. Our IDEA funding, which is our special education funding source, any activity authorized by IDEA is also, could also be part of our recovery or our ESSER 2 budget. And then McKinney-Vento, which is our grant monies for the homeless populations and to support homeless students in schools. So this slide is a draft. This slide is to show you that the bulk of our funding for the FY22 budgets and for doing this work comes from our local budgets. And then almost an equivalent amount is in the ESSER funds. Then we also have IDEA B, the special education funding, and the title funds, which is through the Consolidated Federal Programs, and other grants resources. This slide shows the way that the ESSER 2 funds have been allocated in our draft budget. So you may remember that the key student indicators were academic achievement. 28.5% of our budget is spent on academic achievement. Infrastructure, that's 18.9%. That's things like, sorry, I'll think of that in just a second. The other two areas are social emotional learning and, oh, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. These two, the green and the yellow, show where the recovery plan area was at least in two areas, social emotional learning and academic achievement, or social emotional learning and engagement. And then the orange shows how our 34.5% of our funds were for all three areas. Infrastructure was like for our, we have an investment for a second year of our, I can't remember, a purchasing agent that we put in place last year when the pandemic first shut us down, and we needed to centralize purchasing. So 18.9% of our budget is spent on infrastructure. So by entity, our entities are Wethersfield School District, Heartland School District, Mount Ascutney School District, and the Supervisory Union. This slide shows how those funds are distributed. 46.9% benefit all students in our Supervisory Union. And then 12.4% are for investments at Wethersfield School, 14.9% are for investments at Heartland Elementary School, and 25.9% of those funds are for Mount Ascutney School District, which is both Albert Bridge School and Windsor School. SU-wide investments included our Assistant Recovery Coordinator, our Supervisory Union Developmental or Transitional K, I think is what we're calling it, Transitional Kindergarten, Leader in Me Year 1, Summer Academy and Transportation, our Summer Enrichment Camp, Social Emotional Learning Screening Tool, an Hcrs clinician, Southeast Special Ed Collaborative Studies, which is to help us. Katie, perhaps you want to talk about a little bit more about what that Special Ed Collaborative Studies is. Are you able to?
I am. I just had to get the mute button. That is the Southeast region of superintendents are looking at alternative ways to collaborate as a region. So they have Dr. Baker is more well versed in this. I'm on the fringes of it, but it is they are enacting a study to look at some feasibility for how we can collaborate better in the region, both taking into account student needs, staff needs, transportation, and other things of the sort. So we are, all the superintendents agreed to chip in a certain amount of their ESSER funds to look at this because part of what we found during the pandemic is the need to work together and be pretty creative. So this is the way that we're participating. It's a pretty small amount that we're contributing, but it is something that we've agreed to do.
Thank you, Katie. This slide is our, this slide shows you how we just took a snapshot of the distribution of students across our supervisory union. And the first on the left shows the student count by district as of May 17th. Do keep in mind, this does not include our students who opted out of either in-person or remote only learning, and they chose to go with a Vermont Agency of Education home study plan. Those students, we've heard from some families that they will be bringing their students back, but some of those students will not be coming back. So we just took a snapshot of the time that shows you the breakdown of students across our supervisory union. And then the slide to the right shows the percentage of funds as we distribute as this draft budget distributes them across the district, across the 3 districts. In Manascutney, the investments that we made there were 3 permanent substitutes, a K-6 interventionist that will service ABS and Windsor School, a 5-8 math ELA interventionist that will service Albert Bridge School and Windsor School District, an LNA for Wethersfield. Well, this is a split position, but 0.2 of an LNA will service Manascutney School District, and then after-school tutoring at Albert Bridge School. Wethersfield investments included an LNA, a 0.8 FTE at Wethersfield, after-school tutoring funds, 5-8 interventionist, a half-time. Wethersfield FY21 end-of-year perma sub. They needed a sub for the last 5 weeks of school, and so these funds are going toward that position. And then a 3rd grade classroom teacher to reduce the class size of the 3rd grade there, which the current count was, I think, 24 3rd graders with 1 teacher. Heartland investments were 2 classroom teachers to reduce class size in a, Christine, I can't remember. I think it was a grade 6 classroom teacher and a grade, I can't remember. 4. Okay, thank you. A shorter day has helped lower fatigue-related behaviors. Having breakfast and lunch available in the classroom every day has been helpful. The students struggling well below grade level have had a history of struggling in the past. Students who have performed just below, at, and above grade level have had steady growth this year. Students have missed the unified arts classes. That's the words of one of our teachers. This student said, "I liked having breakfast in the class." That was one of our 3rd graders. So we want to get this right. We're not interested in being right. We're interested in getting it right. And how do we get it right we need your help. Our next steps are to get your feedback on this draft. There's 2 ways that you can provide us feedback in the discussion. That depends on the board's time this evening, how much time we can devote to a discussion of what they've heard this evening. And then via our Google survey, again, that is tiny.earl/WSESU recovery. We will submit our draft plan and budget by June 1st, 2021. We can make changes and amendments to this plan throughout its life. So that's through September 30th, 2023. We will be working on Esser 3, which is that 3rd pot of money for relief funds throughout the summer, and we will be in touch for public participation and feedback. Much of what we've done in our recovery plan will meet the outline of the Esser 3 funds, but there might be some tweaks to that. And now I will stop sharing. Whoops, if I can figure out how to do it.
Wow, Angie, that was huge.
Thank you. That was probably the biggest. That was probably one of the biggest presentations I've ever done, 67 slides. So thank you.
Thank you. That was a lot of work. There was a question from one of our attendees if the presentation can be available
Yes, I'll add a few more quote slides in there, not the duplicates. I'm going to make that slide available, make the slideshow available for you on our website. I think I will send it out to board members and then have Larry blast it to our communities and our staff tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah,
yes. Along with the Earl, so that we can get feedback.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I have a question, just a description of 3 of the components. So developmental kindergarten, and then the difference between summer academy and summer enrichment camp.
Okay. Katie, it sounds like that's you.
I could speak to Summer Academy. I think there's a couple of different enrichment camps going on, so I'm not privy to all of that information. But Summer Academy is the combination of working with students across the SU that were identified as needing intervention over the summer through TMP scores and other measures, as well as students identified through the special education process needing extended school year. So that's Summer Academy. That's our 5 weeks during the summer that we've been talking about every board meeting, and Dr. Baker's been setting out in his blasts. I do know there's a couple other camps going on. There's one at the middle school level, having to do with the humanities. Maybe Kate or Colleen could speak to that a little bit. So there's at least that one going on as enrichment. I don't know if there's other opportunities, and I don't want to overspeak out of turn. I don't know if Kate or Colleen.
We were also thinking about, there was some HCRS camp opportunities, and that's for students who are already on their caseload.
Right. We are partnering with them in the afternoons, and those students from our community and other communities will be participating in their camp again for the 5 weeks in the afternoon. But that's one other that we had. Thank you, Angie. That's right.
Okay, thanks. So Colleen, I think you.
I know we have our humanities teachers who receive a grant for the last 3 or 4 summers for enrichment in ELA, social studies, and the arts. And I would like to gather that information before I speak about it specifically. And I could put it here in the link as soon as I find it. But they have received the grant again this year. I just don't know the theme and the specifics.
Great, thank you.
And then what was the other one, Amy?
Developmental kindergarten.
Oh, the transitional K.
Yeah, transitional, sorry.
You want
Christine
and
and
I'm happy to start, and Katie can chime in because it came out of some needs from parents and pre-K teachers, I believe, a few months back, where kids have attended pre-K or maybe not, but they're age-wise, they're ready for kindergarten, but developmentally maybe just not quite there yet. So we've actually brought all the kindergarten, pre-K, speech and language, OT staff together over the course of the spring to develop a common kindergarten registration process and screening tools. And we're going to get together and discuss what we discovered through the registration and screening process, and make some recommendations for students that could benefit from a transitional kindergarten, which is a new program to us that we're really excited about. And what happens in TK is students work on pre-K case standards through play and projects, and they work on early literacy and numeracy skills. And at the end of the year, we assess and work with families to determine if they're ready to go on to kindergarten or if they're ready to go on to first grade. It's an opt-in program for parents. It's capped at 15 students. It'll be located at Heartland Elementary School and staffed by a teacher and a support staff. And Katie, what did I miss?
I think you hit just about all of it. Part of the discussion early on was also around students' access to preschool programs, both our in-house program and other preschools during COVID, a lot of places needing to be remote. and trying to fill the gaps there for students entering. And all, the other piece of preserving our pre-K as a 3-4-year-old pre-K, which will be also extending their hours for next year. So this is a little bit of a whole package of we're going to have 2 pre-K classrooms and the TK classroom to address some of our early childhood needs, and they'll be full-time. So that's not technically, the pre-K is not technically an Esser, but we had been planning that for a while and having those discussions and then leading to the TK. So we are pretty excited about all of the opportunities for our younger learners to get to them at an earlier age.
Thank you. I see where Elizabeth and Anne Marie have their hands up, but someone in our chat asked about who all was, as far as preschool programs, included in the screening process. Were any of the private? This person says, I do not believe private preschool programs were included in the process.
In terms of kindergarten registration, the local preschools are notified through our universal partners about kindergarten registration, and they have a pretty long-standing process on that. The development of the registration was the kindergarten staff, because that's what they do. But in terms of notifying and making sure people knew that was happening, there were schools put out information, as well as it was shared with our partner preschools. I'm not exactly sure of how that was done. We try to get everybody. If we miss somebody, it would be good to know so that we know for future reference not to miss them.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth and then Anne Marie.
Thank you. I first wanted to say congratulations to all of you, not just on putting this really thorough plan together, which I know is required, but you've really done a stellar job. But my real congratulations comes from having already being in the position to draw from what you have already created and enrich what you've already created. And that's really something, that's a lot to be proud of. So I congratulate you. My one question, which I already put in the tiny URL, but it's a simple question. That is it only one HCRS clinician being added?
We currently have 2, so we'll end up having 3 total, and 2 school psychologists total. So our mental health resources are being significantly beefed up by those 2 and all 3.
Can you tell me how do you know whether that is commonly used resource, not just HCRS, but local designated agency providers?
I think, yes, generally it is. There are some, I think places vacillate between whether they hire in-house, which is, as you know, right now for hiring, it's pretty interesting to do. And then people vacillate back to using outside agencies and community mental health. The advantage of our community mental health, we have a great relationship with Hcrs, is they also can support, if families choose to go beyond just school-based clinicians, their family-based services, their families counseling, the community resources, we can't duplicate. And that ends up for some of our families being an amazing resource that we help facilitate them getting that started, but then they're able to take over. So I think it's nice to have. And especially when you're dealing with some fairly intense situations as you get higher up on the ladder of need. So I don't know the percentages, but I think we're in fairly good company to do that for the clinicians.
Okay, I have more questions for you, but I'll ask you offline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anne Marie?
Yes, I actually have a few questions, but I'll just sort of do one and then I'll come back in line. How are we gonna pay for other years? I know the funds are supposed to go through 2023, correct? But it looks like a lot of these positions, it's only going to pay for 1 year of them. How are like the following year going to be paid for?
Yes, Anne Marie, this budget is for ESSER 2 funds only. The ESSER 3 funds are almost, I think, twice as much. And that is, so the ESSER 2 funds were to take us through the next school year and that summer. So we used ESSER 1 funds for probably maybe 2/3 or a little bit more than half of our summer program. And then we're using ESSER 2 to pay for transportation for our summer program and some other things in the summer program. And ESSER 3 will do the same thing. So ESSER 2 ESSER 3 will pick up where ESSER 2 is falling short.
Okay, yeah, I was a little concerned because you showed that slide about what ESSER 1 funds were to be used for, what ESSER 2 funds were to be used for, and it seemed like ESSER 3 funds were pretty limited as far as what you could spend them on.
That scared us too. When we first heard it, we're like, oh shoot, because we're looking for maintainability of the funds. And that's what the Agency of Education is asking us to consider, how we maintain programs. And so the ESSER funds do have some restrictions about building. Many people are using their funds to build their, to add buildings and to fix the situation that, for the many schools, they're still not 5 days a week because of their numbers. So it's that sort of thing. In ESSER 3, we have to, in our recovery plan, we have to go back in and be more intentional about our maintenance of effort, how we're going to continue to support these programs and what our phase out process is. I think we have to be more deliberate in our explanations for that. So that's a lot of work coming this summer.
Okay. I have some other questions, but I'll come back.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Ethan McNaughton, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks. So we heard a lot of good anecdotes about things that teachers and kids said. I've seen the template that the Vermont Education Department put out for kind of their example for how they'd like to see the recovery plans look like. And so on theirs, they'll give each category, then they say the data used, then the next section is the interpretation of the data, and then the next section is the preliminary ideas for it, and it goes on and on. And what I was expecting to see tonight was, one, you did all those surveys, but we didn't hear a report back of the results of those surveys. We heard anecdotes, a couple of things that were cherry picked out, but I think what would be really helpful for everybody, and I hope that was actually looked at, was, okay, what was the thing that we hit the most from the students? What was the things we hit the most from the teachers? And even breaking down to schools, where some schools felt that they needed X more than Y, and some schools felt that they really needed this other thing, and so that we could then target what we're going to do based on what we felt that our needs were. So that was the first thing. The other thing is the breakout that we got. I kind of expect to say, okay, here's the need that we identified. Here's a specific issue that we want to tackle. Here's our plan for tackling it. And then here's our cost for tackling that issue and the line items budget, but there's no budget provided here. There's no line items. And I know that came up at the Wethersfield School Board meeting, and that board members were very interested in seeing that. The parents were really interested in seeing actually the budget items. There's no line item here. So I'd love to see, one, I don't know why the results of the data haven't been shared. I think that the state's going to require you guys to show the data that you collected and present that. And then the budget actually spelled out instead of you know, that pie chart, and okay, you know, I can see why that could be helpful to present and stuff. But for most of us, we want to see the actual data so that we can see how that's going. And then I wanted to get into the actual specifics of the recovery, because Wethersfield has gotten pretty in depth on how this is going to look when they're on the ground, seeing how it's going to get implemented. So one of the real big concerns that came out from teachers and parents at Wethersfield was that we've lost our our TIPS program, which was our homework support program that was right after school, which was a really successful program utilized by students. But now with the new schedule that's presented by the district, the teachers have to be in this development, I forget the exact name, this being professional development, right? For that hour that's right at the end of the day. So the teachers can't coach, they can't do the homework help that they used to do anymore, or spend time with the students after school. And
I did speak, Ethan, I did speak with Jean Marie before the meeting, and there has been some movement on that. I believe
Good.
that they have bridged that gap through the use of some of the paras, and then there will be a pause program.
Yeah, and so pause is a different program, which will be great. But again, getting back to the teachers, and as the teachers requested, and we're pretty, the teachers that spoke at the meeting were all expressing their strong concerns. And so getting back to the identifying the problem and then the solutions, one of the largest problems that we faced last year was the decreased instructional time. And it came up a lot in Wethersfield. And we're going to lose, I know the numbers kept changing around at the meeting that got presented to us by the central office, but my understanding is the school day next year, the plan is that it's going to go from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the students, their day, right? From the day that time they have to be in their seats to when the bell rings and they're dismissed, which is a 6-hour day. And pre-COVID, they had 6 hours and 35 minutes. And I know the staff, the teachers at Wethersfield, were really concerned that where they can make the most impact is when they have time with their students. And they're losing that time. And I was hoping to see someone stand behind why they think that we're going to not only overcome the losses we had by reducing that time with students, but that we're going to get it back by still reducing the time that the teachers have with their students. And in Wethersfield, our committee feels very strongly that our teachers are very good teachers and that they're equipped to do the job. And what they need is to be permitted to have the time with the kids. And the number one need for them is not to be taken out of the classroom to do more training, but to be able to have more time with the students. And they're asking it. And they came to the board and asked for more time with the kids and to be given that time back. And the presentation that we just went through, it didn't even mention the shortened school day and why we're going to shorten the school day and how that lines up with any of the goals, and why it's going to, again, still have those teachers. Paras are important. They do a lot. But to remove the ability of all of your teachers to connect with the students after school and instead designate a couple of other individuals to do it, regardless of their training, isn't the same as allowing the teachers to build those bonds. So I'd love to hear those types of issues addressed.
Thank you, Ethan. The Wethersfield School will be having a new principal coming on board. And I believe part of the conversation, the administration would like to include that new principal in that conversation. And also when you were talking about scheduling, that is coming up on the agenda.
Okay. The day, how long the day is, and that stuff will be addressed later?
I believe there will be some discussion.
Okay, so if we could focus on the data stuff, that would be good.
I'm sorry, but we have several other people with their hands raised, so we need to keep moving. You could put your question in a chat, or also address it in the tiny URL. That would be the very best. Thank you. Rebecca, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Amy. So, yeah, I just wanted to thank you. I know, Angie, that you work with a group of other individuals and all of the presenters today. Wow, lots of work, and you know, it's been a stressful year. So to be able to like remain focused and really come up with a plan that's an attempt to work with the problems that continue to show up. It's amazing work that you're doing, and thank you. But I did want to ask a question. So my question is, will you be collecting ongoing, is there a way that you're going to be collecting ongoing data to assess the interventions that you are utilizing over the summer? So that's my question.
Yes, that's a very important question, because our MTSS, our multi-tiered system of supports, one of the things that happened that was an unfortunate, I guess, what do you call it? It was lost because our interventionists that usually helped with our data and our MTSS systems in our buildings, they were put into the classrooms to reduce class size. So we had gotten some very great training from Jennifer Patnode last January, a year ago, January, on creating a multi-tiered system of supports. And we were in the process of identifying a multi-tiered system of support supervisory union level to support the MTSS work in the buildings. Now, each building has a slightly different approach to MTSS simply because their staffing patterns are different. Their needs of their students might be different. But there are some things that we share, and one of those things would be data collection processes. How do we analyze that data? Also, we share programs. What programs are we using for intervention? Are we using programs that are data research-based? Are we just doing what we call a double dose, which is a child gets a lesson during classroom instruction and then comes out for another, a repeat of that lesson, maybe delivered through a different modality? For example, they may have been practicing with numbers in the classroom and then they come out and they work with manipulatives in their intervention period. That's an example of different modalities. So we are going to have to be very intentional about creating, this is one of the reasons that we are asking for that time at the end of the day, so that we can have robust multi-tiered system of supports. We need to be able to do that work. We need to have staff that are available to do that work and to look at the data so that the instruction that they do provide students targets the areas where students need it most. Our staff have a variety of comfort levels with data. We also have a variety of tools that we use for that we get data from. And we have a new tool in our Power School called Performance Matters that none of our staff, with the exception of the ad team last March that were trained on it because it had just come in to existence and had been operating in March last year. So that's a tool that I've been using that I've found really helpful, because I can go in and I can look at free reduced lunch rates. I can look at gender differences. That's why I can confidently say that when we look at our winter Track My Progress in 2020 and compare it to our winter 2021 Track My Progress, that we're not seeing huge gaps and learning loss when we look at students by gender and by their income status. So those are the kinds of conversations that our staff and the skills that we want to build in our staff. Did I answer your question? Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Angie.
Nikki?
Okay, try that again. I just wanted to give a shout out to the whole team that organized this plan. I've heard most of the plan in other presentations, but to hear each of you present the parts that you're most passionate about was just really impressive, and you can see the heart that went into this. I also wanted to say that this is a huge springboard to implementing our strategic plan. And to me, it's really impressive to see that we're coming out of a pandemic, I think heading towards a stronger implementation than our strategic plan than if the pandemic hadn't happened. I think that the lessons learned through the pandemic that you guys presented just really highlight the issues that we had prior to the pandemic that just made them so much bigger that we were able to target them directly as a result. So I just want to thank you for jumpstarting our strategic plan in such a strong way and for getting us moving in a really good direction. Thanks.
Thank you, Nikki. Elizabeth Craig.
This is actually Elizabeth's husband, Christian. Just a quick question. Where do I find the line-by-line spending for the Esser funds or the recovery plan? And then where do I find the data that was collected to create the plan?
Angie?
Hi, Christian.
Yes.
I'll be sending out the slideshow from tonight along with the needs assessment. That is what Ethan was asking for. That was phase one that was sent to the state that shows our statements and what our list of different interventions might be or investments might be. I will be sending out the draft of the recovery plan when it's written. Basically, the pieces that were in the slideshow tonight will be transferred into the plan. The advice we got from our Agency of Education team leader, there's a different team leader for each region of the state, was to select two or three really important, like our priority investments, and then to only report out on that. So otherwise, our recovery plan would be 100 pages long, and we would be trying to measure a bunch of things. So I will be putting that plan together and sending that out to through our staff and our community email blast, and that'll probably go out Thursday or Friday.
But what I don't understand, if that's going to go out Thursday or Friday, shouldn't that have been presented this evening so we have time to comment on it or provide feedback? I believe the recovery plan's due on June 1st. So how are we supposed to provide comment or be a stakeholder as a parent, and we are stakeholders in this process, without seeing any of this information?
The recovery plan is represented in that slideshow. So your comments and questions,
but we're not able to see the
in that
data.
slideshow.
We're not able to see the data. We're able to see anecdotes, but not the data.
The data is not, you're not going to see the raw form of the data. What you're going to see is statements based on the data in the needs assessment.
I think that's a difficult process.
That is the process that the Agency of Education outlines for us. They don't want us to turn in all of our templates, all of our spreadsheets, all of our graphs. We are assigned with interpreting the data and putting our statements of interpretation in the needs assessment.
So that's just the district administrators that are allowed to see that?
No, that's going to be shared with you.
When?
Tomorrow.
Okay, so we have
Yes.
2 days or 3 days to comment on that plan or that information to give you feedback.
That's right. And you can always comment on it after June 1st because the Agency of Education has assured us, as I've assured you, our community tonight, that our recovery plan is a working draft and it will change. If there's something in that recovery plan that isn't working for us and our data says something different, then we will look at it and we will adjust it. It's a living document.
But you're hiring positions that can't be changed.
Yes.
So I guess
if
I would
you
have a hard
have-
time understanding changing the plan if you're hiring for positions that are contracted employees.
If you have further comments, could you use the tiny URL, please? So we can move on. I have two more. I have another person with a hand raised.
Certainly.
Thank you. Jamie Turner.
Hi, thank you. I work in the accounting field, so I know how much work went into this, so I thank you for that. However, I was just wondering if I could get a little bit more clarity on how the purchasing agent fits into the whole mix.
Yes, Jamie, I'm happy to talk about that. So when prior to the pandemic, each school had an administrative assistant or a purchasing agent in the building that processed all of the purchase orders and made the ordering, and then the invoicing was done at central office. So when we shut down schools, there was no way for that purchasing agent to work in the school. No one was going into our buildings, right? So then we centralized that process, and we hired a purchasing agent that and created a process where purchasing is all done through that purchasing agent. So that's Kylie Taft, and she accepts orders and then she processes the purchase orders and then orders items, and they all are then sent. I think during the pandemic, the items, like during the shutdown, items were brought to the central office or delivered. I mean, I think custodial staff may have been accepting packages and things like that, but that was the response. So we're having that position for 1 more year, and then that will either be locally funded. Well, hopefully it will be locally funded because it has streamlined the process of purchasing. I don't know what the experience, perhaps some of our principals might want to chime in on the experience in their building and how, if that's improved the ordering process for them. But I don't know.
I'm happy to speak to that if the board would like. Amy, is that a yes?
Certainly, yes.
It's absolutely streamlined the process. Staff can go in. It's all online now because before it was on paper, and with staff not being in the building, that was really difficult. So we use eFinance. We use a Google form now, and the vendors are all in there. Staff go in and submit their own orders. They come to myself or other administrators for approval, and then they get invoiced and ordered. So it's quick, it's easy. It's much more efficient than it was in the past. So I hope that helps.
Thank you for the clarification.
Great, thank you. Anne Marie?
Yeah, I guess that one other thing that I was wondering about is, and it sort of deals with what Christian was asking. A lot of what's on here, they are positions, so I don't see a whole lot of flexibility in this. You had mentioned that flexibility was key, but like if so many of the things on here are actual positions where we have to hire somebody, I don't see a lot of flexibility to make changes, like if something isn't working.
We have hired positions. We have offered contracts that are contingent upon federal funding. If the community said, no, this isn't going to go, then we would have to adjust because the funding wouldn't be available. So that would be how we would address that.
And then also, just a lot of the spending seems to be at the SU level, and the schools themselves are getting, a lot less. I'm wondering if in the ESSER 3 funding, if that will be adjusted at all, so that now that these positions at the SU level have been filled through this, will some more of the ESSER 3 money be available for schools?
I do believe that will be the case. I mean, the Summer Academy is a big piece of our, and Transitional K. The Recovery Coordinator, those are Supervisory Union investments. The Leader in Me investment is substantial for the first year, and then is slightly decreased in years 2 and 3. So I would think that would be the case, Anne, but I don't know for sure until we have those monies budgeted out. And I really don't know if the agency is going to require that we have a 3-year budget for ESSER 3. So it'd be FY 22, 23, and 24, which is very odd to think about having budget beyond the the year that we're going into. So we'll see what the guidance is. The Agency of Education has been getting the guidance in dribs and drabs on ESSER 3. So that's just been a little slow in coming.
Thank you, Angie. Kate, Ryan, I saw that you had your hand raised a couple of times and then it went down.
Yeah, I raised it, but then you said the scheduling was coming up next. So I'll just talk about it if necessary at the scheduling part.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Ethan, you had another comment?
Yeah, thanks. Couple. So first has been, again, going on the templates where it talks about, your stakeholders that you're going to have to list, like your school board members, students, parents, teachers, administrators, CTE partners, mental health agency representatives, and other community members. So that's one of the parts that they want you to list for your collaborative stakeholders represented. So I'm hearing this, and I don't recognize all of you on there, but I know a portion of you are central office, but I'm not hearing from my Weathersfield School Board, for example, which ones of them are members of this team that put this together, and why aren't they presenting it? In fact, I didn't hear any of Weathersfield presenting it here that I recognize, and I'm sorry if one of you was a Weathersfield person that was presenting any of this. But certainly all of this outreach and the stakeholders part, I don't feel that any of this was followed in terms of having the stakeholders of the parents and the school board members and everybody else on this committee. I'm not even sure who was on the committee. Just maybe they just picked the people there on the central office to present it. But I would like to see the teachers and stuff who were the stakeholders presenting this to us. The other part of it that's really frustrating, this is a public meeting, and there are public meeting laws to require people to actually take their comments offline and not allow them to get public responses and hold a public meeting. Instead, to have them all, so other people can't hear their concerns, and to submit it through this thing, and then you guys do it behind the scenes. That's not how the public meeting is run or works.
Ethan,
and another,
excuse
I've got
me.
one more comment before you cut me off. And another one, and first of all, you guys ignored all my questions. The other piece of it is that this is supposed to be an SU meeting, and we're hearing a ton from the presenters, which is important, and I appreciate they put a lot of work in. But I'd love to hear from more of the SU board members to find out from them, okay, what were their goals? What were their thoughts? How are they spending the money? I knew from our Weathersfield School Board meeting we had recently that our school board hadn't even been shared the numbers behind this. So even they hadn't seen it yet. And the problem is when nobody has seen the numbers, there's no approval process here from any stakeholders. There's no even opportunity for the school board members to represent their communities, and they're who make up the SU board. And if our members didn't have it, it seems like the other school board members probably didn't have it either. And so I don't know who's running this, but we're way off of what's supposed to be done. And the presentation didn't include any of the data or any of the goals that how we're going to hit the needs. So that's what we want to see. And we're so up against the gun now.
Thank you, Ethan. Just a reminder, this is a meeting that is held in public. It is not a public meeting. So thank you.
It is a public meeting subject to the public meeting laws. Absolutely.
Yes, but it's a school board meeting. I'm not going to get into a discussion with you on this, but it is a meeting that is held in public. It is not a meeting for the public. That would be a community forum, and that is not what this is. So thank you. Were there any other board comments on the presentation? Hearing none, we will move on to scheduling. And let me see, Kate, Ryan, or Angie and Kate?
Yep. I just wanted to clarify two things that I thought were really important that I heard before. The student school day is going from 7:45 to 2:15, not 8 to 2 o'clock. And the time after school from 2:15 to 3:15 is not being used for trainings, which I think was the term used. It's used for teachers have to go to these professional learning communities. So when we want to do that MTSS, that system of support, a teacher or a parent puts in a recommendation, and then a team gets together and they say, well, these are the problems, these are the solutions that we want to find for them. When we did not have that time at the end of the day, which we did this year, it could sometimes be a 3 to 4 week turnaround between handing in that paper and getting a team together. And forget it during the winter, because with the snow, if the snow day hit and then a February break hit or something like that, you could, in theory, turn in that paper and not have any response for 4 to 5 weeks. When we know better, we do better. And we learned this year that that collaboration time for the teachers at the end of the day was necessary to get supports in place quickly for the students. So it's not necessarily being used for training. It's being used to do the work to meet our strategic plan, which could include Leader in Me, which could be a training. But the majority of it, it's being used for collaboration among staff to meet the needs of the students through IAP meetings or 504 meetings or all these other meetings that typically take place after teachers' contracted time, and is super stressful to our staff and not getting the attention that they necessarily need. So we learned through this year that by giving those teachers that collaboration at the end of the day, it makes them more effective teachers.
Thank you. So Angie, were you ready to talk about scheduling or?
No.
Hey, Amy.
Yes, Scott.
Yeah, this is Scott Richardson. Is it okay if I step back to the agenda item that we just left before scheduling? Because I was just kind of gathering my mind there. But
Oh, certainly. Yes.
okay. Yeah, I think one thing that that our community would appreciate understanding is that one thing that the board members got tonight, and I cannot, was a somewhat more detailed budget. And so insofar that this is a board meeting and not a meeting for the public, we have that information, and I'm happy to see that. And I hope that the community can understand that and trust us as elected board members to have that in front of us at this point. That is one thing. Secondly, it's not my understanding that the recovery program that has been outlined is an entirely different system. It's more like some planned spending and efforts within a system that we have, our school district's governance system that we have. And the reason I bring that up is because, you do see like a significant amount of spending at the SU level. And that's because that's where special education is housed in Vermont school district governance. And that's where transportation is handled, and technology and software and the service of that function in the district. And I said transportation. So, I mean, that it's logical that you're seeing a need of these ESSER monies at the SU level. I'm not exactly sure why Heartland is one of the smaller ones, but I trust that it might actually be a recognition that we've done some spending, already. And so, we didn't need to do additional spending, but I don't want to say too much, but I think that I just wanted to, put that out there, that the board members have a little more information in front of us, and it really does seem very logical to me, and I appreciate what I'm hearing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Anne Marie, you have your hand raised, and then Bill Yates, and then Nikki.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to give a little information to people in case they wonder why Wethersfield and representatives and some people from the town are here and are upset. The main feeling from Wethersfield on this is that we've been, at least on the administrative level, left out of these discussions. Not that anything particularly has been done that's wrong or not right, but we just feel like our principal is leaving. And so she was not included on a lot of things, and a lot of us really feel as though she should have been. She knows what our school needs. Just because she's not going to be here next year doesn't mean that she should have been not included. And that's why Wethersfield is upset about this, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. Bill Yates.
Yeah, I thought it might be helpful for me to put in a perspective from a whole different end about that the administration had to face up to. I was the one in Hartford who was tasked with gathering this information for them to make these type of choices. And it was an extremely rush job. What the administration at Windsor Southeast Supervisory had to do was gather the information in an extremely short amount of time, compose the information in an extremely short amount of time, and then present the information to the state in an extremely short amount of time. I spent a good week, some late nights, pulling data out of everywhere. So I would like to commend the administration and the administrators, David and Angie, and all the building principals for the hard work that they've done for what the state put them through. That's it.
Thank you. Nikki?
Going back to scheduling, if we're there again, in my entire time on this board and the Heartland board, I've been hearing from teachers that they need more time and that they don't have enough time to get everything done that they need to get done in order to be effective with the students. And so when I saw the scheduling plan with the release between 2 to 2:15, I will admit, from a parent standpoint, I recognized that this was going to be a challenge. And I also recognize that this is going to be a challenge for all parents. But from having seen the schedule, Christine presented a potential schedule of what the teachers were going to be doing in the hour after the students leave. And to me, that is what teachers have been asking from us for a really long time. And I personally am excited that we are looking at giving them that time to do that extra work that they have often done off the books, after hours, or that they just feel overwhelmed that they don't have the time to do, such as and creating project-based learning. And so to see that in a schedule that explicitly says that you're going to have that time to work on problem-based learning or MTSS or trauma, any of those things, I think is just really fantastic. And so I think that that part of the schedule is commendable. I know that it's challenging on people, but I think it's going to be worth it. And I think that that time, I hope that that time will lower the teacher's stress levels so that the time in the classroom is even more effective.
Thank you, Nikki. I have a question, just seeing in the chat, there's a question about what the actual schedule is going to be. Like, when will the day start and when will the day end? There seems to be some confusion on that.
I can answer that, Amy. The drop-off period will be from 7:50 to 8 o'clock. So staff arrive at 7:45. That's the contracted start of day for them. Students arriving from 7:50 to 8 o'clock. School starts at 8 o'clock. And then depending on how long it takes your school to dismiss, the goal is for dismissal to end at 2:15. So in Heartland, we learned this year through the health check stations that we can really do drop-off in 10 minutes or less. So we're gonna, our hope is to continue what we put in place this year, and we will start our dismissal to meet that 2:15 departure time. So whatever that is in your school, it might be a few minutes longer if it takes you longer to dismiss. Does that make sense? So in years past, in Heartland, we would start dismissal at 2:30, 2:35, and end it by 2:45. That was the goal. Buses rolling out at 2:45, kids, picked up by then. So I think that is the goal across the SU, that students are dismissed by 2:15.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Let's see, Bill and Nikki, you still have your hands raised? No? Okay. And Kate Ryan, you had your hand raised briefly?
Yeah, then Christine started talking, so that works for me.
Great. Okay. Ethan, you have another comment?
Yeah, thank you. So, and that clarified, and we spent a lot of time this on our local board meeting. So Wethersfield used to be 7:50 that the bell rang and their class began, as opposed to when they can come in the building. I know there's a lot of different things about coming in the building, all that. And then the 2:25 is when they started to dismiss them to go to the buses. And so now on the Wethersfield end, this is what was presented to us, and I think was just confirmed. When they actually start their day, not when they arrive and doors open, any of that, but when they start the day is 8 o'clock, and when they begin dismissal is 2 o'clock. And so that's a 6-hour day. So again, that is 35 minutes less time during the day. And that was one of the concerns that our teachers were consistently bringing to our school board, saying that they did not like this change. And then the other piece on the professional development, I know we've added professional development. I'm not saying that it's a bad plan to have professional development. The big push from the teachers that came and spoke up at the school board meeting, and it wasn't just one, it was multiple, was having it that last hour of the day prevents them from being able to do their extra homework help with the students that they used to do and parents brought up the coaching that they can't coach anymore. And also to meet with parents if they come in and they want to grab them and meet with them a little bit about things they're seeing or worried about. So if that was at a different time of the day, whether it's at the beginning of the day, before the day starts, whatever it is, but putting it at that last hour means that they can't meet with those students, and they'd have to actually have a student leave and come back if they wanted to meet with them after hours or something. It really just eliminates that opportunity. I'm not saying that professional development isn't important, but we had very strong voices from our teachers. They did not pick this, that they are concerned what's more important is to be able to do that tutoring in the one-on-one time and give that kid a little extra help, or when he had a really bad day, to be able to talk to them and work through that with them and get them on track. And that they're going to lose that because that's such an important time, is that little bit of time at the end of the day when they could have a student and have one-on-one time or meet with their parents or do the homework help. So that's why it's about where it was put in the schedule. not the fact that we're going to have development time. And is it really that necessary that has to be right there?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for expressing your concerns and teachers' concerns. It sounds like administration needs to have some more conversation with teachers, possibly, probably, but thank you for bringing that to the attention.
But does someone want
Kate
to
Ryan?
respond to that issue, though?
I can respond to it. So, hi, Ethan. My
Thank
name's Kate Ryan. I'm one of the principals at Windsor School. We did have teachers on the committee that worked with this. The union leaders represented the teachers on here. The response to the hour was that need to ask for more collaborative time. I want to be real clear that while parts of it will be used for professional development, not the bulk of it will be used for professional development. It'll be used for collaboration to meet the students' needs. And the last thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if the email went out to all the schools yet. I only have that intimate knowledge of my school. But there will be, like in our school, we have BTG. I believe you have pause. So that childcare and homework help will be provided by those outside agencies and the staff from 2:15 to 3:15. And then the certified staff will pick up the tutoring and the one-on-one. So the kids don't have to leave the building and come back to get those services.
Thank you, Kate. That helped clarify a lot of the concern that I was seeing in the chat. Mark, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, this is primarily for the principals. If it turns out the set schedule isn't working for you professionally, I just want to make sure that the individual principals have the flexibility to allocate that time as they see fit, because they're the ones that we search for. We have the search committees for, and we interview. We want to make sure that our own principals have the say over the building that they're in charge of. I just want to make sure that that's part of the thinking, as far as we understand this is what everybody wants as best practice. I just want to make sure the control is still in your hands.
I can answer that if you're asking for an admin. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, I guess that wasn't really a question. Please feel free.
Oh, was it just a statement? Then I can keep quiet.
Well, no. I would like
I can answer
like
that
an
a little
assurance
bit.
that it is. That'd be great. Thanks.
I think it might be important to, Amy and I talked about this briefly, to kind of point out contractually that the school day is not based upon, there's the work day and then there's the school day. The school day is not created by the principal. The school day is actually decided by the school boards. So I think that's where that flexibility would probably come from.
On the SU level or on the school level?
Within the contract with the professional staff, it is within the school boards. And within the contract, it says the board. In the preamble of the contract, it states within that the boards, the board, the Ascutney board, the Heartland board, and the Weathersfield board will create the school day. The work day is well, that's
Yeah. Okay, Bill. Thank you. That almost creates more confusion in the scope of this. So we have many items to continue on with our meeting here tonight. Are there any other board questions on the scheduling? Let's see, Mark, is your hand still raised, or and Bill. We have, I believe it is a community member, Carrie Jewell, and then Nikki Buck.
Yeah, I just was hoping Bill would finish his statement about what that means for the workday.
Bill, can you do that?
Now, I think I agree with you, Amy. I think what I was trying to say muddles things more than actually clarifies anything.
Yeah, suffice it to say it's contractual. Bill?
Yeah, it's not just contractual. So I guess my point is that there's nothing within the teacher contract that states that states on when the school day starts and when it ends. That is within the contract based upon the school boards. But that's not the only factor with setting within the school day. Is the contract. It's also the administration presenting it to the boards and making those choices.
Okay, thank you.
I just want one follow-up. So there's room for each individual school board to work on the start and stop of the day, or how the teacher's time is spent?
It is up to clarify, try to clarify my statement. There is nothing within the contract between the school boards and the school district employees that sets when the school day is. That is within the contract up to the school districts. It doesn't mean that there's wiggle room between the districts to have it different. There are so many moving parts in creating a schedule that it's nearly impossible to say, oh, the different school boards can set their school day the way they want. There's busing, there's shared services, there's special ed. Those are all factors that have to be taken in. The plan is extremely complicated.
Thank you, Bill. Nikki, then Anne Marie, and then Mark. And then we have to move on.
Christine, I'm going to put you on the spot because I know you did a lot of work on this. So I know part of the contract also includes breaks and planning periods for teachers. And I'm just wondering how that fits in with the schedule. And are students losing academic time, or are we shifting time that would have been lost anyway to a different time during the day?
Great question. Contractually, teachers are guaranteed a 30-minute duty-free lunch and a preparation period. So those have to be built into the daily schedule. I would say students are not losing time. We're trying to be more efficient with time, less transitions. There were times in Heartland, and this might vary by school, where a student could have an additional related arts or special, as we call them, during the day. That no longer is the case in Heartland. So I can say that they're not losing time. In fact, we hope that the benefit of the collaborative practice time with teachers will allow them to go deeper with students, and learning will be more meaningful, and students will make academic gains, actually. So I hope that answers your question, Nikki.
Thank you, Christine. That's what I was hoping might be the answer. Thanks.
Anne Marie.
I was talking to one of our middle school teachers, Mr. Vila, and he actually was talking about that that the middle school teachers in our school would prefer to have this planning time in the middle of the day, like a lunch. They used to, I guess, all take a few years back. They used to all take lunch together, and then the middle school teachers wouldn't be involved in recess time. Like, why instead of taking time away from the kids, aren't we trying to think of more creative ways like this to sort of find time rather than taking that 35 minutes from the kids?
I can answer that if you want, Amy.
Please.
So as you heard Bill say, schedules are incredibly complicated. And whenever teachers are not with students, somebody has to be with students to supervise. So it's really, really difficult to get teams together when you have to ensure that parts of that team are working with students. So you might be able to do some small group work, Anne Marie, but you're not going to have large teams or pods together because we just don't have the resources to cover that.
Amy, can I pipe up here too?
Yes, please.
I mentioned this earlier. In my entire time on the board, one of the biggest complaints that I've heard from teachers is that they don't have the time. And under the way that we have been doing things, which is trying to find an hour here and trying to find an hour there, those hours just aren't being found. And so I think it's time to try something new. I think that we are shifting out of this pandemic, and it's time to try a different way of scheduling those hours in so that those hours actually can be found. And hopefully that this way will make it work. But I've heard for years, like 5+ years, that teachers are not getting enough time to work together, and they're not getting enough time to do project-based learning, coordination, and all of that. And I don't see the current system as sustainable. And I don't want to go back to that system. And I want to have our teachers be able to work together and learn together. And I think that this is the best way forward.
Thank you, Nikki. Angie, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that the other challenge that presents, Anne Marie, is that when we are doing supervisory union level work, which is everything that has to do with proficiency-based curriculum, instruction, and assessment, we have to have all schools represented at the table. And when we don't, we run into issues of alignment and coherence across the supervisory union. Part of an MTSS is to develop a local common assessment plan. We need teachers at the table to do that. When we could go to each building, but then the collaborative aspect of that and having grade 2 teachers meeting with grade 2 teachers in other buildings is extremely powerful. And I think that some of those meetings, like we're trying to build something new, looking at the past. And in the past, we didn't always do it so great. So I think we have to be willing to look toward the future and build what we want it to be. And then we assess it and say, okay, did that work the way we wanted it to? I think we can do it.
Thank you, Angie. I think we can too. Rebecca.
I just want to say that in my years in education, both as a guidance counselor, as assistant principal, I heard both sides. I heard the sides of educators who just wanted to dedicate all the time they had in the building with their students. They just, and that they were passionate, that was their love, and that's what they were there to do. And I also heard the side where they did need the professional development, but where were they going to get the time to really do that? And most of them did not want to take away from the time with their students. And it just sounds like it's just a really hard balance to try and come up with. But it just sounds like, from what I've heard from the principals in the last several months, they have really attempted to address both, and that is that time, that precious time with students, and at the same time knowing what is important for their teachers to continue to grow in a way that is important. So I don't think it's an easy conversation, but I'm so glad that it is that their teachers and principals and administrators are moving ahead and moving and trying to come up with a balance that's going to support students, teachers, community members, and parents.
Thank you, Rebecca. Let's see, I believe it's getting late and we have still some very important conversations. Nikki, did you have more? Your hand is raised still? No? We are going to move on to policies. Our first policy is the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union anti-racism policy, the second reading. Do any board members have comments or questions on the anti-racism policy? We've heard a lot from the public. Just hoping to hear from board members. Bill Yates.
I've done a lot of reading today, including the policy and some of the concerns from the public. And I'd like to say that I feel the policy is quite well written. And simplistic in a way, yet specific enough to move the district and the community forward. I think the group did a wonderful job.
Thank you. I just wanted to read something. So a lot of the work that we are doing with both the anti-racism and the equity policy come out of a law. It's called, let me see, Act 1, an act relating to ethnic and social equity study standards for public schools. And let me see, I had to, okay, so so the Attorney General and Human Rights Commission held 3 stakeholder meetings, and I'm reading from the act here. They held 3 stakeholder meetings and found, quote, a surprising amount of coalescence around the most important issues. And the, quote, primary overarching theme was that we will be able to reduce racial disparities by changing the underlying culture of our state with regard to race. And it goes on to say, one of the main suggestions for accomplishing this was to, quote, teach children from an integrated curriculum that fairly represents both the contributions of people of color, as well as Indigenous people, women, people with disabilities, etc., while fairly and accurately representing our history of oppression of these groups. The other suggestions were to educate state employees about implicit bias, white privilege, white fragility, and white supremacy, and increase the representation of people of color in the state and school labor forces by focusing on recruitment, hiring, and retention, as well as promotion of people of color into positions of authority and responsibility on boards and commissions. So if people are wondering why at this point in time we have an equity policy as well as an anti-racism policy, is because we are working within the state law that was passed in 2019. Not only that, but it is the right thing to do. Were there other comments from board members? Rebecca.
Well, I just want to say that for those of us who are on the anti-racism policy committee with community stakeholders and meeting with Dr. Crum around this issue and informing ourselves around this issue, one of the things I walked away from our discussions was a video that we saw where you had middle school students who were saying, this is not an issue that I'm comfortable speaking about. And I think that when you have students at that age, even younger, seeing what the news media is putting out, what their parents are talking about, what the community is talking about, and they can't comfortably have that conversation in a setting with their peers, it's not a good thing, because we know that is where many of us really form our ideas about what the world is about and how do you move forward in it, and where do I fit in it, and how do I contribute to it. So I hope that that at some point, that if you were to, sometime down the road, if you were to survey our students and ask them those questions, and they can speak about it comfortably, that would be amazing. And I hope that that's something that does come about as a result of implementing this policy in our district.
Thank you, Rebecca. Scott, you have your hand raised.
Yes, and Colleen did. I don't know if she's still there and she wants to go
Hi,
first.
Scott. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, Colleen. And then
That's what, no, my hand went down. I got booted off of the internet and had to come back. And then my hand was down. And, I think I'm just wanting to reiterate what other people are saying. We have had some comments come in from the community that have questions about this policy, and that I just want to say, as a board member of Heartland and as an SU board member, that I, like Bill, feel like, and Rebecca, that this is a solid document that's really well written and meets what I think we want to bring forward as a community, based on conversations that I've had with people too. That's it, and really appreciate the work we're getting to do with our the workshop that we're participating in, that some of us are getting to participate in. Thanks.
Great, thank you. There has been a request to share the drafts of what these policies are. I was about to go in and look, but that also really distracts me from running the meeting. Could someone go to the agenda with the documents that were shared for this meeting and share that link in the chat for people? If someone could do that, that'd be great. Thanks. And Scott.
Thank you, Amy. I wanted to bring the board members' attention to the last page in the bold section, and just remember, I brought up that subject or the timing there, and I think I used an example of quarterly as we see financial reports or some wording like that, and so we ended up with this. No, there was more discussion than that. I won't say that it was just there were a number of board members that tossed that around, and it ended up being this quarterly concept here. I think that what I was trying to say last month was that it seemed like this subject matter would be wholly in the realm of the superintendent and administrators, building administrators' regular conversations. And I didn't want anything in the policy that would kind of push that aside and make it seem like the board had just a quarterly expectation. Do you follow me now? So does any other board members have an opinion on that?
I have in my notes from what you said last time, the following.
Okay.
You said that first you said that maybe it should be biannual, and then, which I think you meant semi-annual. But then you said that, and I'm not. You said that you thought it should be quarterly, and that it should be tied to implementation procedures. And I think that was the reason I wrote it down, was that I think it was a really good point. That we have the policy, and then we also have the procedure document. And I think last time we looked at both side by side, and the procedure document has a bunch of steps in it. And to like mark the steps, I think should be part of the policy.
I agree. I think it might be something that might happen very often, almost every board meeting, or perhaps every board meeting.
That's what we decided, was that we would put it in the policy quarterly. But at least for the beginning, we're going to have it be every meeting. We're going to keep it a standing. That's what we decided. But we wouldn't put that in the policy. We can decide to talk about it on a weekly if we want. But,
yeah. Well, I'm glad. I just wanted to bring that in front of the board again.
Okay, thank you. And I think what, as far as monitoring the policy, there are, as we, the board, create our schedule, which we're going to do once we have a little bit more free time. We're going to have a schedule of policy reviews, and there will be some policies that we will look at maybe annually. This will not be one of them. This will be, at the very least, once implementation has happened, this will be reviewed. There will be some sort of report on this policy on a quarterly basis. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we could decide, and this is just, I'm just saying this, so don't hold me to this, but it could be the first meeting of every quarter once implementation has happened, the first meeting of every quarter, that this will be discussed. There will be a report on this policy. That, if that makes sense, when we put together a policy report schedule, that this will be, it will be a schedule so that our administrators know to have the report prepared.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Amy, and just my notes from the last meeting, I think what he's trying to say is that it'll be in the policy part of the agenda as a quarterly thing that comes up for review, just like we're reviewing things every 3 years and whatever. But I think based on the nature of the content from my notes from the last meeting is that he's trying to reiterate based on the content of the topic that it very likely would come under maybe a superintendent's or a principal's report in another facet on a general day-to-day level as well, so that those two things are not mutually exclusive. They might occur simultaneously. Is that right, Scott?
Yes, that's well put, Wendy. Thank you very much.
And I think I was also getting things confused. Terminology, oh my gosh, and interpretation of terminology. So we do have a policy review where, say, every 3 years a policy gets reviewed. But there's also a reporting on policy to make sure that we are implementing our policies, adhering to those policies. And that's what I was talking about with this, that it would be quarterly, that we would get a report from our administrators that would possibly even be separate from a superintendent's report. If that makes sense. Just to muddy the water in my brain. Yeah. And let me see. So are there any other comments or questions at this point on the anti-racism policy? This is the second reading. Nikki.
I'm just going to reiterate what everyone else said. I saw comments from the community and reviewed them and reviewed a lot of their sourced material and just felt like this was the right answer. And that the materials that I read and the work that I did in response to community questions just made me feel stronger that this is the right direction. And I'm excited that we're moving forward with this.
Thank you. Mark.
I just wanted to announce publicly that I read all the input as well, and I seem to be on the same page with all my other committee members. Seems to me that the biggest complaint was hearing from the public was that equality was not the theme, and it just brings me back to the picture of the 3 different height individuals with the no box, medium-sized box, and large box. And the biggest complaint about the policy seemed to be that it didn't address all the world's problems. But I still stand by it. I think it does what it needs to do, and I think it needs to be done at this time. So thanks. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Mark. Colleen.
I don't mean to drag it out. I know you have a very busy agenda and you're trying to wrap things up, Amy, but I just wanted to say one of the things that I really appreciate about the Anti-Racism Task Force is working alongside our board members and having the time to have discussions together and talk through how difficult the work is, and that we can all be aware of all the perspectives we are trying to represent when we work together. And for me, all of this work is about us working together as a whole SU, and I really enjoy working with the board members on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Elizabeth.
Thanks, Amy. I agree with you, Colleen. I think it's been really gratifying being able to work with everybody in the same way that Portrait of a Graduate was and in the way that Portrait of a Graduate purposefully lifts up our students. This is the same sort of thing, like all gathering arms to make this kind of lift. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done. We've worked really hard on this, and it's been a really it predates the committees that we've been on. It's been, you know, kind of wafting in and out of our supervisory union for 6 or 7 years now, and it's really hard to believe that we're here, but it's wonderful that we finally got here. And so all hands on the big rock. Everybody push.
Yay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have the policy. There's still so much work to do, but so this is the second reading. Would people feel comfortable voting to approve the policy now, or would you prefer to have a third reading?
I'm ready.
I thought this was the third reading.
No, the third reading is on the equity policy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Would
ready.
someone like to make a motion to adopt the anti-racism policy?
Can I comment first?
Oh, Chris, certainly.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm ready to vote on it now, but to be honest with you, given the type of question that it is, I think that leaving it for the next board meeting, have a third reading, gives an opportunity for a little bit more public comment. And I think that whether we agree with the public comment or not, it's worthwhile to make sure that the public feels like they've had an opportunity to be heard. So that would be my suggestion, would be to wait one more time.
Right. A lot of this meeting has been taken up. I mean, it's 9:30. We could have this at the top of the agenda at our next meeting so that it all happens up front as opposed to on the tail end. Would people be okay with going one more?
I
Yes.
think it's a good idea
Yeah.
to have it at the top.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
And Nancy.
I so agree with Chris because I thought many of the things people said needed to be thought about. And I agree that we should wait. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. So we are moving on to the equity policy, which is, this is the third reading. So we will be, I'll be taking a motion to approve or adopt the equity policy. Again, this is a policy that was developed with the Vermont School Board Association, the Vermont Superintendents Association, the Vermont Principals Association, and the AOE.
Amy, are you talking equity or English learners as the third reading?
Equity.
This is going to be really anal or obsessive, but there's a dash above the to realize this commitment to equity, the district will. So that's my complete.
Second
Right
page
above
under implementation.
Yeah, right above the T, and that's just going to bug me. Also,
it's a good question what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. If we could get that fixed at some point, I will move to pass the. I will make a motion to pass the equity policy.
I will second that, and with Bill's correction.
I believe that can be fixed. I thought that was just a smudge from my printing it. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the equity policy? Nancy?
Oh, no, that was an old hand. Sorry.
Okay, so all those in favor of adopting the equity policy with the strange little typo corrected, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to adopting the equity policy? Thank you. We have the equity policy approved.
Such a good girl.
Next, oh my gosh, we are there COVID updates, or have the COVID updates come through all of the updates that we receive every Friday, Sunday, and Monday?
Can I just, Amy, in place of the COVID update, can I just tell the full Weathersfield and Heartland boards about the whatchamajigger pause on the excess spending threshold?
Oh, certainly, yes.
So I'm not going to put my pen on. It's a legislative update. Hopefully it'll get signed into law here pretty quickly. Both the House and the Senate passed a bill concerning the equalized pupil weighting study. But what's really, they're going to look at it, how to implement it. That's not what's important for you at the moment. What's important for you at the moment is that the bill includes a 2-year pause on the excess spending threshold, retroactive to this year. So it's not, yeah, so your taxes will be reasonable this year. So write those letters to the governor and get him to sign it into law quickly. Anyway.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's always good to hear good legislative news. Yay. Next on the agenda is SU board goals. It is really late. Can we have this on our next agenda, please? Thank you. Next, Scott, you had asked to provide some information.
Yeah, it's really not a big deal. It was, so hardly, I don't get asked to do much as your SU treasurer, but so the, it was brought to my attention by the payroll coordinator in the central office that both Weathersfield and the SU accounts are in the same bank, and that the bank has their regular run-of-the-mill rules for things like withdrawals in a day. And we were running up against that, and it had to do with both of the districts being housed in the same bank, and that writing and doing payroll for in the correct fashion monthly, and just bumping up against that ceiling, you might say. And so all I did was provide, once that was explained to me, it made perfect sense. And I just signed a piece of paper so that the bank knew that there was at least one community member from the SU board that had talked to the central office staff and seen that. And so now we have a higher spending threshold to make that work. It's not a big deal.
Excellent, but good to know. Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Because without your report right now, we would never have known that. There are just so many little intricacies to the running of a school district.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a good point you brought that up, and it definitely doesn't include Scott Richardson. So it was I was going to say, you know, that's just an amazing central office. Human resources, accounts payable, payroll coordinator, the administrative assistant, and of course the chief financial officer. And it has very little to do with a board member, but it's a good thing to see once in a while. So I'm glad that there's some new faces going down there to sign some of the manifests and stuff. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Nancy, you had something you wanted to report on?
When I found the letter, it involves only our Mount Scottney School District, so I'll hold it off to our meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nancy. Items for action. I believe we already did our item for action at the time of action. And I'm fading. So how about we set our next agenda? Top of the agenda will be the anti-racism policy. And board goals. And will we need, yes, I'm sure we will need more discussion on recovery, or just an update on how that's going?
We'll probably need a discussion on recovery and likely ESSER 3. I do think tonight's meeting made me think about the importance of having a public forum, which other school systems, my colleagues, have done for their communities.
Okay, thank you. And that reminds me, this is completely off topic of setting the next agenda, but there was a question, there were some comments about public meetings and open meeting law. And I just wanted to read something that is part of the work of a school board. And that is that board meetings are public meetings, but they are not a meeting of the public, and that we provide an opportunity for community members to share their opinions and their views, but we can also, because it is not a community, it's not a public forum, we can put reasonable restrictions on that. And that means that we can say, okay, you have 1 minute or you have 2 minutes, etc. And that it is well within the expectation of a board chair or another board member to ask a person to stop talking, for want of a better term. Again, I'm getting very tired. Are there any other items? Bill, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think we should probably plan to have an update of negotiations be it either, hopefully it doesn't have to happen in an executive session.
Okay, thank you. And Katie?
To remember to unmute. I had talked to Dr. Baker about doing the resignations and new hires at the SU level at our next board meeting. So if we needed to put that on, if that was okay.
Oh, certainly. Yes, thank you.
I'm fading too, Amy, so we're all there with you.
Okay, I think that is going to be a very, very full meeting because there's always something else that comes up, surprises. So,
wait, real quick, sorry.
Yes,
I sent
certainly.
an email today. I think I meant to send it to all the SU board members, so I hope you all got it. That Windsor's a little bit behind the 8 ball, so we haven't done our Leader and Me presentations yet. So ours are coming up this week. I know that's a big chunk of the Esser funds, and I know that people might want to know more about it. So I invited you to both our K-8 presentation and our 9-12 presentation. So I hope you can make it if you want to.
I saw that. Thank you, Kate. It looks really interesting, especially after the short presentation we got tonight. Anne Marie?
I was just wondering how long those presentations are. It's at 2:30. The one I would want to see is at 2:30 tomorrow, but I'm at work then. So like, is it like something I can do like in a half an hour? I can tell my boss I just need a half an hour, or is there somewhere that I can watch it online later in the day?
Sorry, I think if you went on for the first half an hour, you'd get a really good idea. And then the next part of it, we only have it scheduled for 45 minutes. And I think that last part will just be questions and answers. So if you have any questions, you can just send them to me and I can get them to Dana Jean.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Angie?
I think one of the things we might want to think about, probably, I don't know when the date of the next meeting is, but I'm sure Dana Jean, who is our Leader in Me consultant, would be happy to bring a presentation to the board. So I think she offered to do that. So maybe not for the next agenda, but maybe before school starts.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. With that, I do not believe we are in need of executive session. So I will take a motion to adjourn our meeting. I want to thank everyone for all of the comments and your patience and just the courage and the strength that all of us have together working as a team. So thank you. And I'll take
Amy, before you adjourn, just to confirm, you're still talking next meeting is June 28th. That is fourth Tuesday or Monday rather, correct?
Correct.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Aye.
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 Aye. Nicole and Rebecca.
Aye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Sweet dreams.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.